Hi, welcome to my channel. A couple of videos ago, I posted a tutorial for these velvety net overalls. I recently made this two-piece set using the same fillet stitch, and there were so many similarities between the construction of the two outfits, I decided to make this video as a kind of supplement to the overalls tutorial. Because there are so many redundancies between the two-piece set and the overalls, I won't be doing my usual in-depth, step-by-step guide, but rather more of a show and tell. So if you haven't seen the overalls video yet, there's a link up in the corner of your screen and in the description to check it out. I use this bulky weight tube yarn that I really like working with. You may have seen it in some of my other videos when I demonstrate a stitch because you can clearly see where your hook needs to go without any of the fuzziness of a spun yarn. If you're new to crochet, I recommend getting a skein of this yarn, at the very least to practice with, so you can really get familiar with stitch anatomy and become confident counting stitches. The label says cotton nylon, and I've confirmed with the manufacturer that it's a 100% cotton outer tube stuffed with a nylon filling, so it has the feel of a cotton garment while the inside nylon gives it a bit of body. I also used an 8mm hook, and I'll put a list of supplies along with links in the description. To start on the pants, I started with the waistband and worked down. I chained 9 and then made a stretchy rib stitch by slip stitching into the back loop only, starting with the second chain from my hook. When you get to the end of the row, chain 1, turn your work, and repeat the slip stitching into the back loop only. You'll do this until you get to the desired width of your waistband. Because the body of the pants are going to be made with a fillet stitch, it's a good idea to make your waistband with rows and multiples of 4. If you lose track, an easy way to recount is each peak or bump is a row and each valley or groove is a row. When you get to the point where the waistband fits snugly over your hips, stop 1 row short. So on your final multiple of 4 rows, only make 3 because your last row will be made by joining your end to your beginning. When you're ready to join the ends of the waistband together, don't make the turning chain. Just slip stitch directly into the other end and then slip stitch the rest of the way down. After you've joined the waistband together, you'll start on the fillet stitching. It's the same as the overalls, where to start a round you chain 7 and triple crochet into the 4th chain. It's pretty easy to count where to work because, as I mentioned, each peak is a row and each valley is a row, so I worked into every other peak. And then for the rest of the round, chain 3 and triple crochet. I made a women's size small, around a US size 2-4, and when I was done I had 26 squares in my round. Once I made this initial round of fillet stitches, I increased 1 square at each hip for 5 rounds. It's helpful to pin the sides like I did in the overalls video. If you need a reminder on how to increase, go to the 6 minute and 56 seconds mark on the overalls video. By the time I was done, I went from having 26 squares in my round to 36 squares. Then I made another 5 rounds with no increases to complete the rise of my pants. Because I wanted my shirt to have a cropped fit and I wanted the pants to meet right at the shirt's waistband, I made the rise extra high, above my natural waist. One thing to keep in mind for this project is, I recommend making your work a little shorter because once it's complete and you're wearing it, it will stretch down a little. So keep that in mind, especially when you're deciding on the rise and inseam lengths of your pants. As I begin to make the legs, I need to add a few extra squares at my inner thigh to comfortably wrap around my entire leg. I slipped it on and used a tape measure to find that I needed about 3 inches worth of extra stitches to join the front to the back. I'll show you how to do this type of increase on my little demo piece here. Line up your work so you can evenly divide it between the 2 legs. Keeping in mind I need a multiple of 4, I made a chain of 11 on my actual pants to get to my 3-inch extension. And then the 12th is a slip stitch to join into the opposing square. And you end up with a connecting piece that looks like this, dividing the left and right leg. Then I continued as usual with a round of fillet stitches and worked all the way around the one leg until I got to the desired length. I made 18 more rounds to make a cropped length inseam, keeping in mind I'm also adding about a 1-inch ribbing to the bottom. When I complete the fillet stitches for the first leg, I begin to make the cuff. Keeping my yarn intact, I chain 5 and make the same type of rib stitching as I did for the waistband. When I get down to the fillet stitch, I make a slip stitch join into it and then turn my work. That slip stitch acts as the turning chain, and then I work as usual until the end of my row. I want a slight taper at the cuff, so I work into only every other stitch in the round. When my cuff is complete, I cut my yarn, attach it at the top of the other leg right here, and then repeat the same process again. For the waistband, I knew I'd be using a black yarn and matching black elastic, so I just used a tapestry needle to run the elastic through the back side of the work. I did 1 elastic at the top of the waistband, and because I wanted it extra secure, I did another waistband at the bottom. not the ends like the way you would tie off a balloon. I still have to cut the ends off mine. If you don't have matching color elastic, another thing you could do is crochet a long chain using your matching color yarn to make a drawstring and run it through in the same way with a tapestry needle. Or you could crochet your waistband to be twice the height, fold it down, and encase an elastic inside of it before stitching it closed. To make the top, I worked from the waistband up. For the waistband, I chained 9 and made the same kind of rip stitch as I did for the pants, again in multiples of 4, minus 1 at the end for joining the ends together. Then I made 3 rounds of fillet stitches. If you worked in multiples of 4, you should have an even number of squares that make up the front and back sides of your top. I had 36 squares in each round. Next, I used pins at the side to mark the front and back halves of my top, giving me 18 squares on each side. Then I fillet stitched on one side as a flat panel for 9 rows. This process is just like when I switched from working in the round on the body of my overalls to starting on the bib section. Except it's even easier because I didn't decrease, I just started my next row and then stopped after 18 squares, turned my work and continued to the next row. On my 10th row, I made the neck opening. To do this, you decide how wide you want your neck opening to be, making sure you have an equal number of squares on each strap. I'll show you an example here on my mini model. I'm going to make 2 squares for the strap and then have an opening of 2 squares for the collar, and then do 2 more for the other strap. After making 2 regular fillet stitches, I chained 7 because 2 squares would be 8 chains, and I stop 1 short of that so I can use the 8th for a slip stitch. And then I triple crochet into the first vertical post of my other strap and make 2 more fillet stitches to complete the row. On the following row, when I get to the chain part, I fillet stitch into every 4th chain as usual. For my actual top, I made 5 squares for each strap and a chain of 31 for the collar, which is 8 squares. Then I fillet stitched the back for 8 more regular rows. For my last row, to close up the work, I used the same joining technique that I used to attach my overall straps to my bib, which is just slip stitches between triple crochets. You can see that step in my other video at 15 minutes and 3 seconds in. At this point, your front and back should have the same number of rows. Then, to make the trim at the armholes and neck, I made the same rib stitch as my pant cuffs by starting with a chain of 5 and connecting it to my work in every other stitch with a slip stitch. And that's the 2-piece net set. Sometimes I make variations on a piece I've already done a tutorial for, but I'd still like to share it without it being overly redundant. So if you found this type of video helpful, or if you're stuck anywhere along the way, I'd appreciate any quality feedback you have in the comments. I'll be posting more videos soon, and in the meantime, follow my new Instagram at Noodleweaver, where I've been posting more frequently. And swing by my brand new shop that's got a bunch of fun designs, which I'll link to in the description. If you enjoyed this project, check out some of my others and subscribe if you'd like to stay up to date on new videos as they come out. Thanks for watching and see you next time!